I never imagined that the people I loved most would hand me an eviction notice on my 35th birthday. That morning, I was buzzing around the little kitchen of my old wooden house on Willow Street, setting up for a simple, cozy party. The lavender I planted last spring swayed gently outside the window. The scent of vanilla cake filled the air. The walls, every brick, every beam I had restored with my own hands. This house wasn't just a building, it was a heartbeat, a living memory. When my mother handed me a small silver-wrapped envelope, I thought it was a card, maybe tickets to a show. But when I opened it, laughter faded. The room fell silent, and staring back at me were bold black letters. Eviction notice. I looked up, searching for answers. All I found were turned heads and trembling hands, and a cousin Chloe smiling like she had just won a cruel game. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply, only to watch them tear down everything you built? If you were standing where I stood that day, what would you have done? Would you fight for what's yours? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful true stories every day. My name is Amelia Carter. I was born and raised right here in Willowbrook, a quiet town where neighbors knew each other by name, and the trees whispered old stories through every change of season. 5 years ago, after the hardest breakup of my life and a career detour that left me questioning everything, I found myself standing in front of an abandoned wooden house on Willow Street. It was crumbling windows, cracked the paint peeling like dead leaves, the garden overrun by weeds. But somehow it still called to me, a silent promise of something worth rebuilding. I scraped together every penny from my savings, took on freelance interior design jobs, and bought the house from my great-uncle at a price that was more a gesture of goodwill than business. From the moment the keys hit my hand, I poured everything I had into it. Every evening after work, every weekend, every dollar, replacing each broken pane of glass, sanding down floorboards until my hands blistered, planting rows of lavender where the dirt had once swallowed hope. It wasn't just a renovation project, it was a resurrection of my faith, my future, my identity, and my family knew it. They visited often. Mom would bring homemade pies, Dad would haul in old photo albums, and my brother David would show up with paint cans and 6-packs of soda. Even Chloe, my golden cousin Chloe, would swing by, glass of wine in hand, talking about how adorable my little project was. At first, I thought the support was genuine. I thought they saw what I was building, what I was reclaiming. A home, a future. I never once imagined they were all smiling while sharpening knives behind my back. You see, legally, the house title had never been fully transferred to me. My great-uncle's will named my parents as custodians until a formal sale or inheritance was finalized. It was supposed to be a formality, something they would fix once I had finished restoring the property. A simple promise sealed with trust. But promises like glass shatter under pressure, and trust once broken cuts deeper than any blade. On the surface, everything seemed perfect. Family dinners, holiday gatherings, late afternoons spent drinking lemonade on the front porch. Beneath it, though, a slow, silent shift had started. It began with Chloe making casual remarks about the rising value of properties on Willow Street. It continued with my parents becoming unusually interested in the finances, how much the renovations were worth, whether the neighborhood was attracting investors. I brushed off the hints. I told myself they loved me. They would never see this place as just a line item on a spreadsheet. I was wrong. That silver envelope on my birthday wasn't just a notice, it was a betrayal. 5 years in the making. It was the brutal reminder that sometimes family isn't who you think they are. And as I stood there clutching the eviction notice, something inside me hardened. I would not go quietly. I would not let them erase the blood, sweat, and soul I had poured into this home. If Chloe and my family wanted a fight, they had just found one. The night after my so-called birthday party, I sat alone in the living room, surrounded by the quiet hum of Betrayal. The lavender I'd planted swayed under the moonlight outside, as if mourning with me. On the coffee table, the eviction notice lay like a wound still bleeding. I should have cried. I should have screamed. But all I felt was a heavy burning question pressing into my chest. Why would the people who watched me bleed for this house choose this moment to tear it away? The next morning, I went digging. I pulled out every renovation permit I had filed, every receipt, every before and after photo. Each one felt like a piece of armor, fragile but necessary. Then I called the one person I trusted beyond blood, Sophia Green. my best friend since college, the girl who once pulled me through nights of heartbreak and finals week disasters without blinking. When Sophia arrived, she didn't say a word. She just sat down, opened her laptop, and got to work. "I want to see the title records," she said, "and any complaints filed against this property." Within an hour, we found something strange. There was a noise complaint about my renovations, a file submitted to the city office. Except it didn't match any actual neighbor's name on Willow Street, it was fake. My hands trembled as I stared at the screen. "Chloe," I whispered. Sophia looked at me sharply. "You think she forged this?" I nodded slowly. "If they convinced my parents I broke the law while fixing up the house, they could justify selling it behind my back." It wasn't just betrayal anymore, it was a calculated ambush, and Chloe was the architect. I texted David, my brother, the one person in my family who might still have a shred of loyalty left. "We need to talk urgently." He agreed to meet the next morning at Cornerstone Cafe. That night, I barely slept. The walls of my home seemed to whisper, seemed to lean in, offering silent comfort. I wouldn't let them fall. Not without a fight at the cafe, David walked in, his face pale, his steps hesitant. I didn't waste time. "You knew?" I said quietly. David dropped his eyes to the table. "Yeah," he admitted, 2 weeks ago. Chloe had told my parents that the house was a liability, that I had done unauthorized work, that if the city found out we could lose everything. She showed them documents, fake documents, and they believed her. I shoved a thick file across the table, my original permits. The real approvals. David flipped through them, his face draining of color with every page. "She lied to me too, he whispered, and I believed her." I leaned forward. "This isn't just about me losing a home. It's about all of us losing who we are." David nodded slowly. "What do you need from me?" "Help me dig deeper," I said. "Help me find what Chloe's really after." Because I had a gut feeling. This wasn't just about selling my home for profit, it was about erasing me. That night after meeting David, I sat at my kitchen table, the eviction notice spread out in front of me like a declaration of war. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was awake. For too long, I had clung to the idea that love would protect me, that family would never see me as a pawn. That illusion shattered the moment Chloe smiled, as she handed me my ruin. If they thought I would roll over, pack up, and disappear quietly into the night. They didn't know me at all. I grabbed my phone and called Sophia. "We're not just fighting to keep my home," I said. "We're exposing every lie Chloe built this on." Sophia's voice was steady. "I'm with you, Amelia. Whatever it takes." We started immediately. First, we needed undeniable proof that Chloe had forged documents to manipulate my parents. Sophia reached out to an old college friend, Chloe Bennett, who now worked at the city's land records office. If there were inconsistencies, Chloe Bennett could find them. Meanwhile, David kept digging into Chloe Sterling's connections. He discovered something that made my blood run cold. Chloe wasn't acting alone. She was connected to Max Harper, a slick real estate developer with a reputation for flipping historic properties into luxury condos. Max wasn't just Chloe's business partner, he was her fiancé, and he had already registered preliminary plans to demolish my home and replace it with a high-rise called Willow Heights. I stared at the preliminary blueprints David printed out. My beautiful home, every lavender bush, every sunlit window reduced to a line item under demolition phase 1. "This is bigger than I thought," I whispered. Sophia leaned over the table, her eyes fierce. "And now we know why Chloe wanted you out fast, quietly before you could fight back." The realization hit hard. This wasn't about me being careless with renovations. This wasn't even about property value. It was about greed. Cold, calculated greed. And they were willing to burn my entire life down to get what they wanted that night. As the rain tapped against the windows, I made a decision. There was no turning back now. No more second-guessing, no more giving the benefit of the doubt. I would not just defend myself. I would go on the offensive. I would expose every forgery, every lie, every backroom deal, and I would do it publicly, where the truth could not be buried under a smiling facade. Because if Chloe and Max thought they could strip me of everything I loved, they had just declared war on the wrong woman. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The house was still dark, the air heavy with the scent of rain from the night before, but inside me, a fire had been lit. It was time to move first Sophia, and I compiled every piece of evidence we had. The original renovation permits, the fake complaint about noise violations, the discrepancies between real city records and the forgeries Chloe submitted. But that alone wouldn't be enough. We needed ironclad proof evidence so undeniable that even the most skeptical investor, the most cautious city official, would have no choice but to see the truth. Sophia reached out to Chloe Bennett again. Later that afternoon, we met her at the public library. She wasn't smiling when she arrived. Instead, she carried a thick folder and a worried look. "I found something," she said, voice low. She flipped open the folder to reveal a fake notarized survey allegedly signed by my parents, granting permission to sell the house. But there was a glaring problem. The notary stamp belonged to Elizabeth Sterling, Chloe's mother, who had officially retired 2 years ago. "This stamp is invalid," Chloe Bennett confirmed, "and submitting this document is not just unethical, it's illegal." Sophia snapped photos of everything. I felt the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. The full weight of Chloe's plan becoming clear. She hadn't just tricked my family, she had committed fraud. Later that evening, David called with more news. Max Harper's company, Harper & Stone Group, had already filed preliminary permits for demolition with the city council. They had listed the property under pending transfer. Even though no legitimate sale had ever occurred, "They're moving fast," David said. "If you want to stop them, you'll have to act now." Sophia leaned across the table, her voice steady. "We have everything we need, Amelia. But we can't just file complaints and hope for the best. Chloe and Max have connections. Money, influence. If we really want to stop this, we have to hit them where it hurts the most, in front of the people they're trying to impress." That's when the idea hit. Chloe was planning her engagement party, a lavish, over-the-top affair at the Bellevue Grand Hotel, filled with investors, real estate tycoons, and local politicians. She wasn't just celebrating her engagement. She was solidifying her future, using my home as a bargaining chip. And she had left me off the guest list, making sure I wouldn't have a chance to interfere. But she had underestimated 2 things. First, Sophia's resourcefulness. And second, the fact that Ethan Harper, Max's own brother, had quietly reached out to me. Ethan hated what Harper & Stone had become. He hated how Max used family connections for dirty deals. And he was willing to help. Ethan slipped us a blank press invitation to the engagement party, one that hadn't been filled in yet. Sophia and I filled it carefully, double-checked every detail, and printed it onto identical cardstock. Then we compiled a presentation. The fake permits, the forged notary seals, the construction plans showing my house as to be demolished. And last but not least, the bombshell recording that Ethan had managed to get a conversation between Max and Chloe laughing about how easy it was to manipulate my family. The plan was simple: walk into the engagement party, get the attention of the room, and reveal everything. Not in a courtroom, not behind closed doors, but right there in front of everyone Chloe had tried to impress. I wasn't just going to fight for my home. I was going to expose their betrayal so completely that they could never recover. That night, sitting on my porch, staring out at the old oak trees lining Willow Street, I made myself a promise. No more fear, no more silence, no more second chances for people who chose greed over loyalty. Tomorrow the real battle would begin, and this time I wasn't fighting alone. The night of Chloe's engagement party arrived. The Bellevue Grand Hotel glittered like a palace draped in silk and gold, every chandelier shimmering under the weight of ambition. Guests in expensive gowns and tailored suits floated through the marble lobby, laughing over champagne flutes and whispered deals. I walked through those glass doors, heart pounding in my ears, wearing a simple black dress and my grandmother's pearl necklace, a quiet armor against the storm I was about to unleash. In my hand, I carried a small flash drive, tucked safely in my clutch. On it, the truth. Every forged document, every fake signature, every recording that could tear down Chloe's carefully constructed empire. As I crossed the ballroom, Chloe spotted me. Her smile faltered. For a flicker of a moment, fear flashed across her face, but she quickly covered it with a tight, practiced laugh and turned back to the crowd. Max Harper stood beside her, all polished confidence. But even he couldn't hide the way his eyes darted toward me, sizing up the unexpected threat. I moved quickly. Before the dinner began, I found the event manager flashing my fabricated press invitation. "I have a short presentation," I said, my voice calm. "It's been cleared with the organizers." The event manager nodded, barely glancing at the paper. 5 minutes later, I was standing at the front of the grand ballroom, microphone in hand. The soft clinking of silverware faded. The laughter dulled. All eyes turned toward me. I took a deep breath. "This isn't a toast," I began. "This is a truth you all deserve to hear." I plugged the flash drive into the projector. The first image appeared. Blueprints for Willow Heights condominiums. My home, my garden, my memories. Reduced to rubble and redevelopment plans. A murmur rippled through the crowd, then came the forged documents. The fake survey approvals. The mismatched notary stamps. Whispers grew louder. Guests leaned toward each other, confusion and disbelief spreading like wildfire. I turned back to the crowd. "My family was manipulated into selling something that wasn't theirs to sell," I said, voice steady, "and this deception was orchestrated by Chloe Sterling and Max Harper for personal gain." Before Chloe or Max could speak, I pressed play on the final recording. Their voices filled the ballroom. Once Amelia's kicked out, Chloe's voice said, laughing, "We can bulldoze that old place and triple our return." Max's voice followed, cold and smug, "No one will ever trace it back to us." The room fell into stunned silence. Chloe stumbled forward, her face pale. That's taken out of context," she stammered. But it was too late. From the side of the ballroom, 2 uniformed officers stepped forward. One addressed Chloe calmly. "Miss Sterling, you are under investigation for document forgery, fraud, and conspiracy to commit property theft. We ask that you come with us for questioning." Gasps echoed around the room. Investors began pulling away from Max, some muttering angrily, others walking straight out the door. Randall Morris, the lead investor for the Willow Heights project, threw his napkin down in disgust. "I don't do business with liars," he said, coldly glaring at Max. "You've just destroyed your own reputation." Max tried to protest, reaching for Chloe, but she shook him off, her mask finally slipping into raw panic. I watched, silent and steady, as the house of cards they built collapsed around them. David, standing off to the side, caught my eye and gave the smallest, proudest nod. Sophia, arms crossed, smiled like she already knew the ending before it began. As the officers led Chloe away, her furious gaze found me. "You'll regret this, Amelia," she spat under her breath. "You've just made enemies you can't even imagine." I held her gaze. "No," I said quietly. "You just underestimated the wrong woman." The ballroom doors closed behind her, and just like that the storm was over. Not with a bang, but with the slow, inevitable crumble of every lie she'd ever built. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. The home I fought for still stood, and so did I. 6 weeks later, Willow Street bloomed into spring. The air was sweet with the scent of lilacs. The trees wore soft green crowns. And my house, the house they tried to steal, stood stronger than ever. The legal battle that followed the engagement party had been swift. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Chloe accepted a plea deal for document forgery and conspiracy. She received a suspended sentence and a hefty fine. Her engagement with Max Harper canceled, quietly buried under headlines. No amount of PR could erase Harper and Stone Group. Collapsed shortly after investors pulled out one after another, unwilling to be associated with scandal. And me. I didn't just win back my house, I found something far more precious. The community of Willowbrook, once a backdrop to my quiet life, rallied around me. Neighbors stopped by with home-baked pies and handwritten notes. Local artists offered to help restore the historic charm of the house. Old friends I hadn't spoken to in years reached out with stories of their own stories of betrayal, resilience, and hope. Sophia and I decided to start a local preservation group, the Willow Street Heritage Foundation, dedicated to protecting homes and memories from being bulldozed by greed. David, my brother, became one of our first volunteers. Every Saturday he came by with paint cans and laughter, helping rebuild not just the fence, but the trust between us. Even Ethan Harper joined quietly, donating funds to the foundation, determined to build something real after years of watching his brother chase illusions. One afternoon, after a long day repainting the shutters, Sophia handed me a small bronze plaque. Engraved on it were simple, powerful words: "The Carter House, a living legacy of Willow Street." I traced the letters with my fingers, a lump rising in my throat. It wasn't just a house anymore, it was a symbol. A reminder that when you fight for what's right with courage, truth, and a stubborn heart, you don't just save a building, you save yourself. My parents, they moved to a quiet suburb away from the noise, the shame and the memories they couldn't erase. We kept our relationship civil but distant. Some things once broken could never fully return to what they were, and that was okay, because sometimes loss carves out space for better things to grow. One cool morning, as I sat on the front steps sipping coffee, a familiar face appeared at my gate. It was Max Harper. No expensive suit, no slick confidence, just a man looking older than his years. "I'm not here to apologize," he said simply. "I know sorry doesn't fix what I broke, but if you'll allow it, I'd like to help fund the Preservation Foundation." No credit, no speeches, just trying to do one thing right. I studied him for a long moment, and then I nodded. Not for him, not for redemption, but because I refused to let bitterness chain me to the past. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing the wrong. It was about setting yourself free. As for Chloe, she vanished from Willowbrook, and no one mentioned her name again. She had built her future on lies, and watched it crumble stone by stone. Meanwhile, my house grew more alive with each passing day. Laughter filled the halls again. The scent of fresh paint and wild lavender drifted through the windows. Friends gathered on the porch for late-night talks and early morning coffee and me. I was no longer just Amelia Carter, the girl who almost lost everything. I was the woman who stood her ground, who fought for her truth, and built something unbreakable. The house wasn't just where I lived. It was where I belonged. It was proof that no matter how fierce the storm, no matter how deep the betrayal, you could rise, you could rebuild, you could reclaim every piece of yourself that others tried to steal. Because home isn't made of walls and windows. Home is built with courage, with love, and with the people who stay when everything else falls away. And now every time I walk through my front door, I don't just step into a house. I step into a victory. My victory, and no one can ever take that away again. Sometimes it's not the bricks or the beams that make a home. It's the battles you fight for it. It's the memories you refuse to let someone erase. It's the way you stand tall, bloodied, bruised, but never broken when others expect you to fall. I didn't just save a house. I saved a piece of my soul. I reclaimed my voice, and I learned that real strength isn't measured by how much you can endure quietly, but by how fiercely you rise when the world tries to silence you. If you've ever faced betrayal from those you trusted most, if you've ever had to rebuild your life from the ruins of someone else's greed, know this: you are not weak, you are not alone, and you are not finished. You are a home built on courage. What do you think about Amelia's journey? If you were standing where she stood, how would you have fought back? Share your story in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And if you believe in rising stronger after the storm, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs a reminder. The strongest homes are built with the fiercest hearts.